In the early 19th century, the vast, dusty highways of India swallowed people whole. Wealthy merchants, armed soldiers returning home, and even entire caravans would step onto the road and simply vanish without a single trace. These disappearances were part of an erasure on an almost unbelievable scale. Over 300 years, an estimated 1 million people were murdered by a single network that left no witnesses, no shallow graves, and never a single drop of spilled blood. These killers lived within the framework of colonial society as respected farmers, as local merchants, and even village police officers. To the public, they were ordinary citizens. To the cult, they were professional assassins who spent their holidays engaged in seasonal slaughter. For decades, the East India Company was unable to mount a defense. They were hunting an invisible ghost that left no footprint. To fight a phantom, the British colonial administration turned to the one weapon they understood best: relentless bureaucracy. They realized that to force this shadow network into the light, they needed a devastatingly thorough intelligence campaign. This document is the physical manifestation of that campaign. It is a massive, intricate genealogical tree meticulously hand-drawn by Captain William Sleeman, mapping out the exact identities of thousands of assassins. Sleeman realized he was tracking a centuries-old fraternity. To destroy it, the administration had to map the cult's literal bloodlines, tracing the inheritance of murder backward across multiple generations. By reducing an untouchable legend to a sequence of names and dates, Sleeman's ledger provided the British with a clear administrative path to dismantling the network. At the very top of this lineage are the patriarchs. These older generations reveal that Thuggee was a strictly hereditary religion, where the art of killing was passed directly from fathers to their sons as a birthright. The cornerstone of their entire operation is represented by this figure, the dark, multi-armed goddess Bhavani. The elder thugs believed she actively demanded human sacrifice, treating their killings as divine offerings to appease her hunger for destruction. To ensure the goddess's favor, the elders observed strict rituals. They interpreted the caws of crows or the cries of jackals as omens, dictating who should live or die, and consumed a consecrated sugar called gur to harden their resolve before a murder. Framing these murders as a sacred duty changed the nature of the crime for the thugs. As they told their captors, they viewed themselves as agents of the divine, seeing their victims with the detachment a tiger feels for a deer. Moving down the branches to the sons, we see how this inheritance was put into practice. Young boys were inducted into a culture of extreme patience, starting as scouts or gravediggers before they were ever allowed to witness a kill. This illustration of captured thugs shows exactly why they were so successful. With their turbans, calm postures, and respectable demeanor, they appeared entirely unassuming. They looked like traveling merchants or religious scholars, the perfect camouflage to blend in with wary travelers. Their methodology relied on a slow seduction. A gang would join a caravan for safety in numbers, sometimes traveling together for weeks. They shared meals, offered advice, and built absolute trust, systematically lulling their targets into a total sense of security. They knew that travelers on India's dangerous roads kept their guards up against bandits. Their deadliest tactic was the systematic exploitation of hospitality, turning the basic social trust of the road into a fatal trap. Once that trust was fully established, a specific tier of the hierarchy took over, the master stranglers, or bertotes. This is where the psychological manipulation abruptly pivoted into the physical kill. Because their faith strictly forbade the shedding of blood, they never used blades. Their tool of choice was the rumal, a simple yellow and white strip of cloth. They would wait for a moment of vulnerability, often while resting at a campsite, until the leader called out a prearranged signal, like "bring tobacco." At that exact second, 3 men would simultaneously strike a single target. A handholder secured the arms, a leg pinner drove the victim face down into the dirt, and the stranglers snapped the rumal tight across the neck. It was a perfectly synchronized 3-on-1 execution. This was a meticulously rehearsed choreography. It allowed them to neutralize dozens of armed men in mere seconds, silently suffocating their victims without ever spilling a single drop of blood. Captain Sleeman identified the Thuggees' greatest strength, their insular familial loyalty, and turned it into the primary tool for their destruction. Looking closely at these tight clusters of names on the ledger, we see the results of his primary strategy. He captured high-ranking leaders and offered them a simple, brutal choice: face the hangman's noose or keep their lives by turning king's evidence as approvers. To save their own lives, these men broke their sacred vows. They sold out their own fathers, uncles, and cousins. Every confession provided another branch, allowing Sleeman to systematically fill in the blanks of this sprawling document. If you read the margins, the terrifying reality of this paperwork becomes clear. Next to almost every name are the grim notations of colonial justice, translating these names into real-world executions and exiles. The 300-year-old cult was not shattered by military force, but by an administrative campaign that exploited their own family trees to trigger a total internal collapse. The resulting wave of justice was sweeping and absolute. Between 1826 and 1835, over 1,500 prisoners were rapidly swept up in a highly coordinated dragnet, tried and systematically removed from Indian society. This site, the sprawling lake and heavy stone walls of the fort at Sauger, became the physical epicenter for this administrative purge. It was here that the captured bloodlines were funneled in for mass trials, and where hundreds ultimately met the gallows. By incarcerating the old guard and strictly monitoring the uninitiated children, the era of the stranglers was brought to a definitive close. The vast pilgrimage and trade routes of the subcontinent were finally rendered safe. The sheer number of the dead pales in comparison to the Thuggees' most disturbing legacy, the chilling duality of human nature preserved on Sleeman's ledger. These men were the most prolific, cold-blooded killers the world has ever seen, yet they were simultaneously respected neighbors, trusted travel companions, and loving fathers.